When my girlfriend first invited me to meet her family over a traditional Sunday breakfast, I was nervous beyond belief. She'd warned me. They were old school. The kind of family where showing up to dinner without a gift meant you'd be judged for years, and wearing shorts above the knee could earn you a disapproving glare and a quiet insult in Turkish. Her dad wasn't in the picture anymore, but I still felt the pressure. I wasn't Turkish. I was just some guy from the US. And I knew deep down her family probably dreamed of her marrying someone from their culture. So, without telling anyone, not even her, I decided to prepare. For months before that breakfast, I immersed myself in Turkish culture. Restaurants, grocery stores, tea houses. I even started secretly taking language lessons, 2 hours a day, every day. I didn't just want to survive that breakfast. I wanted to belong. When the day came, I walked in fully prepped. I brought the best baklava in town, cologne for her brothers, flowers for her mom. I kissed her mother on both cheeks, right side first, just like I'd learned. I took off my shoes without being asked, placed them neatly by the door, and greeted everyone the proper way. Her older sister? I called her Abla. Older male relatives? Abi. Her younger sister kept bringing me tea and giggling about how polite I was. Her mom didn't speak English, but every time I complimented her food, she smiled like I was already part of the family. And she had no idea. I understood everything they were saying, because for 6 months, behind Asa's back, I'd been learning Turkish, not just for this moment, but to surprise her when the time came to propose. And at first, everything was going better than I could have imagined. But then, things shifted. The next time we visited, her mom barely looked at me. In Turkish, she asked Asa, "Why is that outsider still around?" I could feel the tension in the air, but Asa just brushed it off and we went inside. When dinner started, her mom gave everyone fresh meatballs and rice, but handed me a plate of raw ground meat with chopped onions. So raw, the juices were dripping off the plate. Before I could ask for a napkin, her mom said, "This was always Emre's favorite." That's when it clicked. Emre, her ex, and the one her family had really liked. A Turkish guy. And if that wasn't enough, her older sister Zeynep leaned over to their mom and said in Turkish, "Her boyfriend just told me donor is better in Germany." I froze. My girlfriend started to speak, but I stopped her. I needed to see how far this would go. "This meal is absolutely amazing," I said calmly in English. Zeynep quickly translated. "He says Turkish food gives him stomach problems." Her mom's face turned bright red. She started muttering under her breath. I stayed silent, biting back a smile. "Thank you for having me in your lovely home," I added. Zeynep didn't miss a beat. "He says your house smells like a kebab shop and needs a remodel." My girlfriend was fuming. Her mom looked ready to kick me out. That's when I turned directly to Fatma and, in fluent Turkish, said, "Mother Fatma, I've been learning your language for 6 months so I could properly ask for Asa's hand. Everything your daughter translated was a lie. And Allah is my witness." The silence was deafening. My girlfriend nearly choked on her drink. Even her younger sister burst into laughter. Zeynep turned ghost pale, mumbling something about a misunderstanding, but it was too late. Fatma picked up the plate of raw meat and dumped it on Zeynep's head. "What kind of daughter are you?" she shouted. Then she turned to me, hugged me tightly, and, for the first time, called me my son. On the drive home, Asa and I couldn't stop laughing. I don't remember most of that ride. I was too busy thinking, that might have been the best decision I ever made. At the time, I didn't know it. But her sister was still furious that Asa had chosen someone from outside their culture. And it wouldn't be long before she completely flipped our world upside down. 2 weeks after the raw meat incident, things actually seemed better. Asa's mom, Fatma, had started treating me like I was already part of the family, sending extra food home with Asa just for me, checking in to make sure I was eating well. Even the cousins who once stared at me like I was an alien were now offering warm smiles and cheek kisses at family gatherings. But Zeynep? Dead silent. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak to me. I should have known then. She was planning something. The first crack came on a random Tuesday. Asa called me in tears, barely able to speak. I dropped everything and rushed to her place. She was curled up on the couch, laptop open, shaking. She'd received a flood of Instagram messages from someone pretending to be my ex. There were old pictures of me and stories about an ongoing affair, complete with specific details like the name of the restaurant where Asa and I had our first date. "How could you lie to me like this?" she sobbed, scrolling through fake screenshots of conversations I never had, meetups I never attended, promises I never made. I sat beside her, reading in disbelief. Whoever did this knew my schedule, our favorite spots, even details only close friends would know. But something was off. The language felt off, like someone trying too hard to sound American, but getting it just slightly wrong. Asa, I swear, this isn't real, I said. Let me call Alex. He works in IT. He'll help. Alex showed up in under an hour. He'd helped me with home security stuff in the past, and he immediately started tracing metadata from the fake profile. Asa paced the room, occasionally throwing me that devastated look that hit me like a brick every time. Got it, Alex finally said. The IP address traces back to a residential building. Want the address? As soon as it popped up, Asa gasped. It was Zeynep's. We drove straight there. Asa's grip on the steering wheel was tight. Inside, we found Zeynep sitting in her living room. Her laptop was still on, still logged into the fake account. Asa exploded. How could you? She shouted in Turkish. You're trying to ruin my life. Zeynep didn't even flinch. She just crossed her arms and calmly said, I'm protecting you. He's not one of us. He'll never understand our culture. Asa pulled me out of there before things got worse, but Zeynep wasn't finished. A week later, at a family birthday dinner, I was helping set the table when Zeynep suddenly stood up, holding her phone in the air like a judge about to deliver a verdict. I have something everyone needs to hear, she said in Turkish, assuming I wouldn't understand. She pressed play on a recording of my voice. But something was wrong. It had been heavily edited, chopped into pieces to make it sound like I was mocking the Turkish language. Sentences I had recorded while practicing were twisted into insults. It was brutal. Relatives gasped. Some shook their heads. Fatma looked at me, stunned and heartbroken. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Just then, Asa ran to answer the door and returned with a guest she had secretly invited. My Turkish language teacher, Mrs. Demir. She immediately asked to hear the recording, listened in silence, then said firmly, This is fake. I have the original lesson recordings. This young man has never disrespected our language. He's one of my most committed students. She pulled out her tablet, played the real recordings, and the room fell silent. All eyes turned to Zeynep. Her face turned scarlet. Fatma walked over, her voice trembling, and slapped her daughter lightly on the cheek. How dare you, she whispered, framing an innocent person in my home? But it wasn't over. The next month, Zeynep tried a new tactic. She told the older relatives that I was only with Asa for money. She presented fake bank statements, designed to look like I had huge debts and planned to clean out Asa's savings. This time, I was ready. At the next family dinner, I brought along someone else, Mr. McVictoria, my financial advisor, silver-haired, calm, and utterly professional. He laid out my real financial history, steady job, good credit, modest savings. I've managed this young man's finances for 5 years, he said. And I can tell you, he's one of the most responsible clients I've ever had. Zeynep sat there, stunned. And the rest of the family? They were starting to see the truth. Finally, my financial advisor calmly laid out the facts. These documents your daughter shared with you, he said, are completely fabricated. The older relatives, who had barely looked me in the eye all evening, suddenly turned soft. One aunt even spooned more rice onto my plate while murmuring an apology. Another squeezed my shoulder. Zeynep quietly slipped out of the room, but I had a feeling she was just getting started. I was right. Her next move came during a family trip to a Turkish culture festival. As everyone gathered near my car, Zeynep suddenly gasped and pulled out a stack of pamphlets from under the passenger seat, filled with offensive slogans and messages that had nothing to do with me. Look what he's been hiding, she cried in Turkish. He's trying to undermine our values. But before I could even respond, the quietest member of the family, little Alif, Zeynep's younger sister, stepped forward. Actually, she said, holding up her phone, I have a video. She pressed play. The footage was crystal clear. Zeynep glancing around nervously, unlocking my car and shoving the papers under the seat just 20 minutes earlier. The air turned thick. People backed away from her. I was just testing him, Zeynep stammered. But no one was buying it. Then it got worse. 3 weeks later, I woke up to loud knocking. Police. They were responding to a report of a break-in at Zeynep's apartment. She claimed I had forced my way in and threatened her, complete with a cut on her hand to prove it. Sir, we need you to come in for questioning, one officer said. I stayed calm. I understand, I replied. But before anything else, please look at this. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos of me at a Turkish cooking class that very night. covered in flour, apron tied on, standing beside Fatma, learning her famous borek recipe, time-stamped, verified by the cooking school. Even Fatma herself had posted a picture of us on her WhatsApp status that evening. Multiple students confirmed my attendance. The police checked everything. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no witness support for her claims. Later, I found out she'd cut her own hand with a kitchen knife. She got a formal warning for filing a false report. But the final straw came at Asa's birthday. The house was packed, tables filled with food, music playing, everyone in a celebratory mood. I had rehearsed my speech in Turkish for weeks. I was going to ask for Asa's hand in front of the entire family. But I noticed Zeynep hovering too close to the food table watching me. Fatma handed me a beautiful plate of lamb kebab and rice. Just as I was about to take it, Alif appeared beside me. "Take mine instead," she whispered. "Trust me." I did. Alif took a big bite and immediately began choking. Her face turned red, tears streaming down. The food had been drenched in salt and hot pepper. Inedible. Unsafe. Fatma rushed over. "What happened?" she cried. Still coughing, Alif pointed at Zeynep. "I saw her. She messed with that plate. It was meant for him." The room fell silent. Zeynep froze. That's when I stood up, pulled out a small notebook, and began speaking slowly, clearly, in perfect Turkish. "I've been documenting everything," I said. "And I haven't been alone. Alif has helped. So have several cousins who are tired of watching this happen." I handed the notebook to Fatma. Inside, dates, screenshots, statements. Every lie, every fake account, every attempt to damage my reputation and my relationship. One by one, the cousins stepped forward, confirming what they'd seen. Fatma's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. When she looked up at Zeynep, her voice was quiet, but sharp as a blade. "You have brought shame into this house," she said. "You've lied, manipulated, and tried to harm a guest at our table. Worse, you tried to destroy your own sister's happiness." "But Mama," Zeynep whispered, desperate, "he's not Turkish. I was trying to protect us." "No," Fatma said, her voice steady. "The only person we needed protection from was you." She paused. "Until you apologize to your sister and her partner, and I mean truly apologize. You are not welcome at any more family gatherings." Zeynep looked around the room, searching for support, but all she found were eyes full of disappointment. She grabbed her bag and fled, tears already falling. And the party? It carried on without her. For the first time, surrounded by Asa's family, I felt something I hadn't expected after all this. Peace. Things had finally quieted down. The engagement was official, and when I gave my speech, asking for Asa's hand in Turkish, Fatma teared up as she gave us her blessing. It felt like a turning point. Months passed with no word from Zeynep. She missed major holidays, skipped birthdays, and stayed away from weekend gatherings. Asa occasionally asked her mom to reconsider the ban, but Fatma stayed firm. Then, at our engagement party 6 months later, Zeynep appeared at the door. She looked different. Not just in appearance, but in energy. The usual defiant pride in her posture was gone, replaced with what felt like genuine remorse. She approached our table where Asa, Fatma, Alif, and I were seated. She took a deep breath. "I need to say something," she began in Turkish before switching to English so I could understand. "I was wrong. Deeply wrong. I let jealousy and pride blind me. I was angry that my younger sister found love before I did. Real love. And I couldn't accept that it came from someone outside our culture. But I see now. You've done more to honor our traditions than some men born into them. You learned our language, our customs, our food. You've made my sister happy in a way I never imagined. I'm sorry for everything." The room was silent. I stood and replied in fluent Turkish, my accent now polished by months of practice. "Zeynep," I said, "I accept your apology. Family means everything. And if you're Ace's family, then you're mine too. Let's begin again." For the first time since I'd met her, Zeynep smiled. Really smiled. And then, something happened that made the entire room pause. She walked over to the tea station, made me a cup of Turkish tea just the way I liked it. Not too sweet, not too bitter, and served it to me with both hands. "Welcome to the family," she said. The room broke into applause. Fatma wiped her eyes. Asa squeezed my hand under the table. And Alif, our quiet protector through it all, gave me the biggest grin I'd ever seen. As I sipped the tea Zainab had made, I realized something. Some battles aren't won by pushing harder. Some are won through patience, truth, and consistency. I looked around the room at the people who had become my family by heart, not blood. It had been worth it. The celebration stretched into the night, dancing, music, traditional songs echoing through the home. I thought we'd finally found peace. But then, just as we were helping clean up, I felt my phone buzz. A message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Me in college. Disheveled. Holding a drink at a party I barely remembered. The caption, "Your family should know who you really are." I deleted it. Told myself it was nothing. But then more started coming. Different numbers. Different photos. Spring break. Dorm parties. Moments I hadn't thought about in years. Some looked real. Others, clearly edited to make me look reckless, careless, unfit for a traditional life. I tried to keep it hidden. Asa noticed me checking my phone during dinner one night and asked what was wrong. "Just work stuff," I said, forcing a smile. But it kept escalating. One photo had clearly been altered. A bottle of water in my hand was now a bottle of whiskey. A group photo from a study session was cropped to make it look like something else entirely. Whoever was doing this knew what they were doing and exactly which buttons to press. Then it reached Fatma. She called Asa in tears. Someone had slipped the photos under her door, along with printed notes, written in Turkish, describing wild nights, inappropriate behavior, and a version of me that didn't exist. Asa drove us there immediately. Fatma sat in the living room, the photos spread out across her table. Her face was unreadable, part hurt, part confused. The room was filled with whispering cousins, and even Aleph looked shaken. "Explain these," Fatma said flatly, gesturing to the photos. I picked them up slowly. My hands were shaking. "Mother Fatma," I said gently. "These are from college, yes, but many are edited. That one? It was a study group, not a party. That? Not alcohol, it was water. Someone is trying to twist these memories." "Who would do that?" one of the aunts asked. Before I could answer, Zainab walked in. She looked at the photos, eyes widening in disbelief. "I had nothing to do with this," she said quickly. "I promised I wouldn't, and I meant it." For the first time, I believed her. The look on her face said everything. There was no mistaking the look on Zainab's face. It was real. But if it wasn't her, then who? The answer came from someone we hadn't expected. Asa's cousin Murat, who works in cybersecurity, offered to help. He spent hours digging through metadata, tracing IPs, checking the edited images, and what he found left the entire family stunned. At the next gathering, Murat stood up and announced, the photos came from an account registered under the name Emre Yilmaz. Silence. Emre, Asa's ex from university, the one whose favorite dish was raw meat with onions, the one the family once hoped she'd marry. "That can't be," Asa whispered. "He moved to Germany years ago. We haven't spoken since we ended things." But Murat had proof. "He's been back for 6 months," he said. "And look at this." He pulled up a hidden post from Emre's account. It read, "Reclaiming what was stolen. Fixing what was broken." The room exploded in whispers. Some said we should confront him directly. Others suggested calling the authorities. But Fatma sat still, her eyes on the man she once thought would be her son-in-law. "I'll handle this," I said quietly, in Turkish. Asa grabbed my arm. "No, we handle it together." Murat had already found where Emre worked, a downtown office dealing in imported Turkish goods. We went the next morning. When Emre finally came out of a meeting and saw us, he stopped cold. The confident charm he once carried had faded into something tighter, darker. We asked to talk. He led us to a conference room and sat across from us, arms crossed. "I heard about your engagement," he said to Asa in Turkish, eyes never leaving hers. "Congratulations." Asa didn't waste time. "We know what you did. The photos, the messages, all of it." His smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said flatly. I unlocked my phone and slid it across the table. Every screenshot, every fake email, all the evidence Murat had gathered, his jaw clenched. "You left me," he said suddenly, looking only at Asa. 5 years, we had plans. And then you walked away for your career. "I left because you tried to control me," she shot back. You told me who to talk to, what to wear, where to work, and now you're doing this? He stood, pacing. Your family loved me. Your mom treated me like a son. Then you humiliated me. People said I couldn't keep my woman in line. And now you're trying to ruin our lives? I asked, my voice low. He turned on me. You don't belong here. You're just pretending, learning a few words, playing house, but you'll never be one of us. Asa stood up. He's more Turkish than you'll ever be, she said, her voice shaking. He respects this culture. He doesn't weaponize it. Emery let out a bitter laugh. I will see how long that lasts. When the novelty wears off, he'll leave. We walked out. But I knew it wasn't over, and I was right. Emery began showing up, not directly, but enough for us to notice. At the tea house where I practiced Turkish, at the market where I shopped for ingredients, at the restaurant where Asa and I had our first date. Always in the background, watching. Then came the whispers, the stories he spread in the community, about my past, about my supposed disrespect, my real motives. Some people believed him. The warmth we had earned began to fade. One night, while Fatma was showing me how to make Turkish coffee, she looked up from the chesve and sighed. People are talking, she said quietly. Some are saying we should reconsider the engagement. My chest tightened, but she continued. I told them they're fools. I said, judge him by his actions, not rumors. But you deserve to know what's being said. Then it got worse. Somehow, Emery got my work email. He began sending messages to my coworkers, disguised as professional warnings, claims that I was unstable, that cultural conflicts were affecting my work, that I was preparing to leave the country. My manager pulled me aside, clearly concerned. I showed him the full story, the harassment, the manipulation, the evidence. Thankfully, he believed me, but the pressure was mounting, and Emery wasn't done yet. The pressure was mounting. Asa had started receiving messages too. Old photos from her past with Emery, notes filled with veiled suggestions that they were meant to be, and reminders of a relationship that had ended long ago. It was clear now, he wasn't just targeting me. He was trying to pull her back into his orbit. We'd had enough. With Murat's help, we began collecting everything, every message, every manipulated image, every suspicious appearance. We built a full dossier documenting the pattern of harassment. But Emery was calculated. He never made direct threats. He stayed just outside the lines of what could be considered illegal. The police reviewed everything and agreed it was disturbing, but not actionable. And then came the final straw. Asa's cousin was graduating, and the family had rented out a banquet hall for a huge celebration. Everyone was there. Relatives from out of town, family friends, neighbors. I was in the middle of a conversation with a couple of uncles about Turkish football when Emery walked in. He hadn't been invited, but he carried himself like he owned the room, shaking hands, greeting old friends, kissing cheeks. He was charming, familiar. People still remembered him from the days when he dated Asa. He smiled his way through the crowd like a man campaigning for mayor. Asa saw him before I did. Her face drained of color as he approached our table. Fatma Ann, he said warmly, using the affectionate word for mother. You look incredible. I've missed your cooking. Fatma stiffened. Emery, this is a private family event. Am I not family? He replied, with just enough hurt in his voice to make those around us glance over. He turned and handed the graduate an envelope. A small gift for your future, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a strategic move. Just enough generosity to make him look gracious, and just enough tension to make us feel trapped. The rest of the night, he lingered near me, correcting my Turkish with fake politeness, inserting himself into conversations, comparing his past experiences with my current ones. Asa's hands were clenched under the table, but reacting publicly would only play into his game. We stayed quiet, but Emery grew bolder. At one point, he approached directly and said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, I've been thinking about moving back to the neighborhood, maybe opening a Turkish cultural center, something to preserve our traditions. Properly. The message was clear. I'm not leaving. I'm planting roots. That's when someone unexpected stood up. Alif. Sweet, quiet Alif. The one who rarely spoke up during family drama. Emery, she said gently, do you remember when you dated my sister? He smiled, thinking she was on his side. Of course. Good times. Do you remember the bruises? she continued, still soft-spoken, but now with steel in her voice. The ones she covered with makeup? The time she cried after you fought? The way you grabbed her arm at my birthday when she spoke to a male colleague? The room went completely still. Emery's face turned red. You're misremembering, he said sharply. I have photos, Alif replied. I was young, but I wasn't blind. I documented everything. I was afraid for her. Should I show everyone? Asa stared at her sister, speechless. She had never shared that part of her past. Not with her family. She had buried it out of pride and shame. But Alif had known, and she had been watching. Zeynep stood up next. I believe Alif, she said, her voice firm. I remember how Asa changed back then. She became quiet, careful, not herself. One by one, relatives began speaking. Small moments they'd witnessed but never questioned. Jealousy framed as protection, restrictions disguised as culture, control masked as love. The image Emery had spent years cultivating crumbled in minutes. He turned to Fatma, desperate. You know me. You once wanted us to marry. Tell them this isn't true. Fatma stood slowly. I once wished my daughter would marry a good Turkish man, she said. I was fooled by your manners, your family name, your way with tradition. But a man who hurts a woman is not a good man, Turkish or not, she pointed at me. This one has shown more respect in 1 year than you did in 5. He learned our language to connect, not to control. He honors our ways out of love, not performance. That's the difference. Emery didn't respond. He just turned and walked out. Face pale, eyes hollow. His reputation was shattered. But I knew it wasn't the end. Men like Emery don't walk away quietly. In the following weeks, his tactics changed. More subtle, more sinister. Dead flowers started appearing on Asa's windshield. Anonymous calls came in at work, spreading rumors and making baseless complaints. Then one morning I walked outside and found my car tires slashed. Though we couldn't prove Emery was behind everything, we knew. So we stayed vigilant, changed our routines, documented everything. The family came together like never before. Cousins escorted Asa to and from work. Uncles just happened to be nearby when I left my Turkish classes. And even Zeynep, now fiercely loyal, began predicting Emery's next moves like a chess master using the very mindset she'd once used against me. But the final line was crossed when Emery showed up at my job. He posed as a potential client and demanded to speak to my supervisors. He came prepared, with fake emails, made-up statements, even a forged narrative claiming I was unprofessional and culturally disrespectful. But we were ready. Murat had been quietly tracking Emery's online activity. We'd already informed my employer, shown them everything. So when Emery walked into the building, confident and composed, security was waiting. In the lobby, the moment he realized the walls were closing in, he snapped. He lunged at me, shouting accusations in Turkish about honor and betrayal and how I'd stolen what was his. Security restrained him in front of my entire office. Everything was caught on camera. It was the final piece we needed. The police finally had enough. Emery was arrested, charged with assault and harassment. At the trial, Asa finally had the chance to speak freely about their past. Alif presented her documented evidence. Relatives spoke about Emery's recent campaign of intimidation. Even my co-workers testified about the workplace incident. The judge issued a restraining order and ordered mandatory counseling. Emery's family, shocked and embarrassed by what had come to light, sent him back to Germany immediately after the ruling. His business connections in the Turkish community? Gone. His reputation? Ruined. He had tried to weaponize tradition, and in doing so, lost the very community he claimed to represent. But what happened next was something none of us expected. The community began to heal. Women who had stayed quiet for years came forward to speak with Asa. Some shared their own experiences, stories they had never told anyone. Younger women approached her, thanking her for speaking out. The conversation shifted from tradition versus modernity to something deeper, respect versus control. Fatma organized a dinner, not out of obligation, but out of love. This time there were no tests, no quiet glances across the table, just one warm, open embrace as she handed me a plate of her special lamb stew, the kind she only made for family. She patted my hand and said, "You fought for my daughter, not with anger, but with patience, not with pressure, but with truth. That's real strength." Zeynep raised her tea glass. "To family," she said in English. locking eyes with me. The kind you choose and fight for. Everyone raised their cups. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. This journey was never about proving how Turkish I could be. It was about showing who I really was. But the story wasn't quite finished. There was still one final chapter: the wedding. With our cultures coming together, it was always going to be complex. But I never expected the preparations to be the hardest part. 3 months out, Fatma called a family meeting. The living room filled with aunts, uncles, cousins, all eager to express opinions. I sat between Asa and Alif as the first debate broke out over the henna night. Fatma insisted on the traditional women-only celebration. Asa wanted a more modern approach, something we could share together. The aunts argued for hours, voices rising, tea glasses clinking with increasing intensity. Zeynep, surprisingly, took our side. Her defense of our vision earned a few raised eyebrows from the older generation. Next came the guest list drama. Fatma had already invited over 300 people from her side. My parents flying in from Ohio had 20 names total. Suddenly, whispers started about how the American family doesn't value community. I spent nights on the phone calling distant relatives I barely remembered, asking them to attend just to balance the list. And that was before we even got to the venue. Every venue we chose got rejected. Too modern. Not enough space for dancing. No proper kitchen for traditional food prep. Wrong neighborhood. After visiting over 15 places, we finally found one that pleased everyone. But then we found out something we hadn't anticipated. Emery's uncle owned the catering company most commonly used there. That sparked a full-blown family summit. Some insisted we couldn't risk it. Others said avoiding every business linked to Emery's extended family would be impossible. While the aunts debated loudly from the kitchen, Murad got to work researching alternative vendors. Just when we thought it couldn't get more complicated, we started getting strange calls. One by one, our vendors contacted us. The florist, the musician, even the imam. They'd all received anonymous messages claiming the wedding had been canceled. Each time we had to show up in person, bringing family members with us to prove everything was still on. The stress started to show on Asa's face. She was managing her job and putting out fires daily. My parents arrived 2 weeks before the wedding. They were excited, but quickly overwhelmed. My mom's attempts at Turkish greetings were adorable at first, but then came the sausages. She brought pork sausages as gifts from a local farm, completely unaware of the cultural line she'd just crossed. Then she hugged one of Asa's male cousins at the door, with her shoes still on. Whispers spread like wildfire. I became the full-time translator and cultural buffer. During dinner at Fatma's house, my dad casually asked for a beer. The room went silent. I jumped in. "He meant Aaron," I said, hoping no one noticed that he definitely hadn't. Then my mom, trying to compliment the food, smiled and said, "This is almost as good as Greek food." I thought Fatma was going to drop her spoon. Then came the bachelor party drama. My friends wanted a classic night out. The Turkish side expected something more reserved and family-focused. We compromised on dinner at a nice Turkish restaurant. But the moment my college roommate cracked a joke about belly dancers, Asa's male cousins exchanged dark looks and reached for their jackets. I changed the subject so fast I nearly choked on my kofte. Meanwhile, Asa was dealing with her own chaos. The traditional gold-giving ceremony became a quiet competition. Every aunt tried to outdo the others. And someone always made a comment like, "Emery's family would have given more." Asa said nothing, but I saw her biting her lip behind every smile. Then, a week before the wedding, things escalated again. Our musician called. His van had been vandalized. His instruments smashed. Then the florist reported a break-in. And the only arrangement tampered with? Ours. Too specific to be coincidence. Murat stepped in again. He pulled security footage from nearby businesses. And there it was. Emery's cousin. Angry, bitter, and looking for revenge. Involving the police meant delays, headlines, and the kind of drama none of us wanted. So the family stepped in. Zeynep made some calls and found us an even better musician. Elif coordinated younger cousins to watch over vendor deliveries. The uncles organized their own patrols around the venue. The Turkish community mobilized like a small army. My parents watched in awe. My mom stopped complaining about the oversized guest list. My dad started practicing Turkish phrases with Fatma every morning over tea. For the first time, the tension between our two families softened. The crisis had built a bridge. Then came the henna night. Asa's hands shook as the artist applied intricate designs. It's tradition for the bride to cry, but her tears felt too real. Later, she told me she'd received a message, a photo of her and Emery from years ago. Across it, a message. Remember when you were happy? It came from a burner phone. We couldn't trace it. But the damage was done. The night before the wedding, I found Asa sitting alone in her childhood room, surrounded by old photos, old memories. We talked until the sun came up, about everything, her fears, my doubts, what it meant to build something real between two cultures, two histories. Then came the wedding day. It felt like organizing a state event. 500 guests, coordinated arrivals, assigned seating with military precision, my side of the family, 3 tables, Asa's, the rest of the ballroom. But it didn't feel uneven anymore, because through everything, through the trials and sabotage and misunderstandings, my parents had shown up. Not with numbers, but with heart. Then, just as the imam began to speak, a quiet murmur spread from the back of the hall. A woman had arrived, uninvited. It was Emery's mother. She arrived dressed in funeral black. When security moved to escort her out, Fatma raised her hand, silently stopping them. No one expected what happened next. Fatma walked over to Emery's mother, exchanged quiet words, then led her to a seat in the very back of the hall. Even grief deserves a place, Fatma explained to us later. The woman sat silently through the entire ceremony and left without a word. But her presence, rather than disturbing the moment, somehow made it more profound. It reminded everyone that our union hadn't been handed to us. It had been earned. During the gold gifting ceremony, relatives pinned so many bracelets and chains to Asa that she could barely stand. Each gift came with whispered blessings, and occasionally, quiet instructions. "Don't forget your roots," one aunt said softly. "Teach your husband to live the right way," another added. And yet Asa carried it all, with grace. I understood in that moment how much she'd been carrying all along, for both of us. Then came the unexpected, my parents' speeches. My dad had memorized a Turkish blessing, reciting each word slowly, carefully, with all the weight of sincerity. My mother, with help from Google Translate and Fatma, gifted Asa my grandmother's pearl necklace, explaining, in broken Turkish, its 100-year-old history. Fatma wiped away tears. For the first time, she saw the effort. Not performance, just honest, imperfect effort. The dancing started with traditional Turkish music. I'd practiced for months. Still, I stumbled through the steps. But this time, no one laughed. They clapped. They cheered. When the DJ finally played American music, Ace's family watched in amazement as my once reserved parents turned into full-blown party starters on the dance floor. Then, near midnight, Elif tugged at my sleeve, looking concerned. She'd noticed a man filming guests with professional gear, asking invasive questions about our marriage. Murat jumped into action. Within minutes, we discovered he was a known blogger, someone who made videos questioning multicultural unions. Security quietly removed him, but the damage was done. He'd captured hours of footage. It was a reminder. Marriage didn't erase the scrutiny, the tests, the subtle challenges. But as I looked around, at Asa laughing with my mother, at Zeynep showing my dad how to move like a Turk, at Fatma glowing with pride, I knew one thing. We weren't just enduring anymore. We were living. As guests started trickling out, carrying plates of food, as tradition demands, Fatma leaned in and said, "You've been tested, yes, but you passed. Not because you speak our language, but because you listened." That night, Asa found me on the balcony, still wearing her heavy wedding dress, exhausted but radiant. The city lights below us flickered. Her hand found mine. The henna on her skin had already begun to fade. "No regrets?" she asked. I paused. I thought of the fake profiles, the edited photos, the sabotage, the family battles, the misunderstandings, the fear, the work, the weight of every expectation. I thought of Emery's cousin vandalizing the florist, the blogger who would soon publish his version of our story, the quiet comparisons that would continue. My Turkish would never be flawless. Her relatives would always notice. Some would never fully accept. But then I looked at the life we had built. Fatma now called me her son. My parents were planning their next visit. Elif texted me memes about cultural mix-ups. Zeynep now defended our marriage online like a soldier. Murat taught me Turkish card games. The cousins no longer introduced me as the American, just family. The next morning, We returned to Asa's apartment to find it filled with wedding gifts. One stood out, an ornate Turkish coffee set, beautifully wrapped, with no card. We never figured out who sent it. Asa believed it came from someone who couldn't publicly support us, but wanted to say, "I see you." That afternoon, my parents insisted on treating Fatma to brunch at a classic American diner. Watching her try pancakes for the first time as my mom showed her how to pour syrup the proper way, I realized something beautiful. Integration isn't one side changing for the other. It's both sides stretching, trying, laughing at the awkward moments, and meeting somewhere in the middle. A week later, the blogger posted his video, selectively edited, full of innuendo. But this time, the community pushed back. Hundreds of comments flooded in, defending us, sharing their own stories, calling out the bias, and leading the charge, Zaynep, finally putting her social media skills to good use. We settled into married life. Messy, funny, real. Sunday breakfasts at Fatma's continued. But now, my parents joined via video call. Turkish lessons turned from survival to subtlety. Family gatherings became less about proving myself and more about showing up. 3 months later, I stood at Elif's university graduation and gave a speech in Turkish. Not perfect. My accent's still heavy. But this time, the family didn't cheer for my pronunciation. They cheered because they knew I wasn't performing anymore. I belonged.